So we'll start by sort of reflecting on how does your body manage to keep the temperature, the blood pH, the blood volume relatively constant day after day after day after day after day. While you sleep, while you eat, while you're jogging, right? When it's -40 outside, when it's 80 outside, how does your body keep these variables constant? How does it do that? Do you have to be in control of that? Do you have to decide to raise your temperature? All right, good. So your brain controls that. Is it something that you're aware of? Usually not, right? You're not usually aware of it. So this concept, right, or this philosophy where the body is continually altering, making small alterations to keep things in balance is what we call homeostasis. Right? It's where the body is striving to keep things in a constant state of balance, even when we are not aware of it, even while we're not conscious of it, while we're sleeping. Right? So this is the ability to maintain a relatively constant internal environment. And this is a constant environment with regards to certain components such as your temperature, your blood volume, your composition, and your blood pH. How acidic or alkaline is your body's internal environment? Okay. This is going to require organ systems integration. We're going to talk a little bit more extensively about what integration is and how it's brought about. But basically, several organ systems need to be playing together nicely to bring about this homeostasis. Now, also important is that disruption of homeostasis is the basis for disease and eventually death. Right? So the body wants to keep in this nice state of balance, and tipping that off slightly or disrupting that slightly is sort of the first ingredient for the recipe of disease. Okay? And then eventually you tip the scales, or you move the body out of its natural sync, and you disrupt homeostasis. All right. So this image sort of illustrates that. We have this nice, pristine condition, or this steady state, this constant state of balance that the body wants to continually maintain itself in. And there are lots of external factors in the middle here. External factors such as the temperature outside, or the pH, the food we eat, that are trying to disrupt that state of balance. Okay, and if the body does nothing, these factors will succeed. So we will throw the body out of homeostasis, and this is sort of the first ingredient for disease. This is how you start most disease processes, and then eventually death. Okay, so keeping the body in this nice constant state is what we call homeostasis. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to illustrate this, but I'm going to use a scenario of a car, okay? Any questions so far? Any questions? All right, so in this scenario, we have a car that's trying to drive up a very steep hill. So we'll draw a hill. Right. And we'll draw our car here nicely. And when this car starts out, it's going to set the cruise control at about 55 miles per hour. All right, so we're at 55 miles per hour here. Okay. And that's where we set our cruise control. That cruise control is representing the speed that we want to maintain. All right, so we don't want to go faster than 55 miles per hour, and we don't want to go slower than 55 miles per hour. We're going to call that the set point. All right, the set point. So our set point equals 55 miles per hour here. Now, as we approach the foot of the hill, and we attempt to ascend this hill, we're going to slow down, right? That's a natural phenomenon. So we're going to start to slow down here. All right. And let's say we're now at 51 miles per hour here, 51 miles per hour. And so what's going to happen is we're going to send off an error signal here. So that decrease in speed is going to increase what we call an error signal. Okay, because the body wants to maintain, or not the body, because the car wants to maintain that set speed of 55 miles per hour, if we decrease that speed, that is going to send off a red flag, what we call an error signal. Okay. So this is 51 miles per hour. Now, the result of that error signal is going to be increased gas flow to the engine of that car. Right? What will increasing the gas flow do? Right, make it go faster. Perfect. It's going to make it go faster. And so we're going to start to gradually increase our speed once again. All right. Please excuse my car. All right, so we're going to gradually increase our speed once again, and we're going to be back to about 53 miles per hour here as we approach the top of the hill. Okay. Now what's going to happen here is because we've now increased our speed again, that increase in speed will turn off or decrease the error signal. Okay. Until finally we're going to be at the top of this hill, and we're going to be back to 55 miles per hour, which is where we want to be. That's our set point. Okay. All right, so we started off driving at our set point speed, which is 55 miles per hour. We approached the foot of the hill, which sort of slowed us down a little bit as we attempted to ascend this hill. That will send off an error signal, right? That will send off a red flag. And the car is going to have to do something to rectify the situation. So it's going to increase gas flow to the engine. That's going to in turn increase our speed a little bit. And as the speed increases, that error signal is turned off until we're driving right back at our set point where we want to be. Okay. Now let's look at a graphical representation of this. Let's look at a graph here. So we have our time on the X, and let's put our speed here on the Y. Okay, can you see that? Now let's put in our set point speed, which was how much? 55, right? 55 miles per hour. Let's also put 53 and then 51 here. So set point is where we start out, and that's where we want to maintain. That's where we want to keep the speed. But realistically, as we're driving, when we get to that foot of the hill, our speed is going to decrease. Okay. And as our speed decreases, what did we call that? What happens there? That variation in the speed, that drop in the speed was called what? Our error signal. Our error signal, correct. So as the speed drops down here, this creates an error signal. Okay, and that error signal is going to attempt to restore the speed that we want, right? That's going to increase the gas flow. And so the car is going to gradually increase. The speed is going to gradually increase again until we are back at our set point of 55 miles per hour. So what we can see here is that as the speed increases, our error signal gradually decreases until it goes away. It's turned off. Okay. Any questions on that? And this is exactly what homeostasis does. This is exactly how it operates, right? It's going to attempt to restore our body to a state of balance, even while we're not aware of that, okay? Now, with regards to homeostasis, let's look at some terms. The first one is the regulated variable. The regulated variable. And in our scenario with the car, this is the aspect that we wanted to maintain. So what would that have been with our car scenario? What was the aspect that we wanted to maintain with that scenario? Our speed. Good. So the regulated variable with that car scenario would have been our speed. Now, if we were to transfer this to the human body, what are some other regulated variables? Temperature. Good. What else? pH. Good. What else? What are some other variables that we want to maintain? Blood volume, right? We don't want that to go too high or too low. Right, so those are some good ones, right? Temperature, pH, blood volume. The set point. What was the set point? What did we describe the set point as? Sorry? So it was at 55 miles per hour, right? 55 miles per hour. And what would you describe that 55 miles per hour as?
Where you want to be at.
Right, the point that you want to be at, the point that you want to maintain. All right, you don't want to go above 55, you don't want to go below 55. So this is the expected value that you want that regulated variable to maintain. Right? Now, in regards to our body, what are some set points? 98.6. What's that for? Temperature. Good. You don't really want to deviate very much away from that 98.6. What else? What are some other set points? What about blood pressure? We want to keep our blood pressure right around 120 over 80. Although there's some controversy with that number.
130 over
130
90.
over 90 of late. We want to keep our blood pressure right around that nice steady mark. Right? We don't want to go 200 over 100. That's way too high. We don't want to go 100 over 50. That's borderline shock. Right? So we want to keep our body in a nice steady blood pressure around 130 over 90. Okay? Let's look at some other terms here. Negative feedback. Right? So if a regulated variable decreases or increases, the body is going to make a response to either increase or decrease, right? Whichever is vice versa, to help correct that scenario. So this is a self-correcting or an auto-correcting feature. Okay, we're going to look at some negative feedback examples coming up, but it's basically that idea that if a variable decreases too much, the body on its own, right, self-correcting, is going to increase that variable again to bring it right back to that set point. The error signal. He said the error signal was the difference between the value of the set point, where we want to be, right, and the value of the regulated variable. So how far off did that regulated variable change from where we want to maintain it? In the example of the car, it dropped all the way down to 51 miles per hour, which was where we generated that error signal. Okay, so that's not where we want to be. So the difference between where we're at and where we want to be is our error signal.